Almighty God, we give thanks to you, the creator of the universe, and humbly beseech you to direct and prosper the deliberations of the members of this house here assembled for the advancement of your glory and the trust and welfare of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Grant that peace and happiness, truth and justice may be established among us for all generations. Amen. Amen. Namaste.
Oath or affirmation, announcements by the Speaker, bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers.
The Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers, 1 to 2. The audited financial statements of Trinidad and Tobago Mortgage Finance Company Limited for the years ended December 31st, 2020 and 2021. 3. The audited financial statements of Rural Development Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited for financial year ended September 30th, 2021. 4. The audited financial statements of Taurus Service Limited for the financial year ended September 30th, 2019. 5. The audited financial statements of Tourism Trinidad Limited for the financial year ended September 30th, 2021. 6. The consolidated audited financial statements of the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited for the financial year ended December 31st, 2021. 7. The audited financial statements of National Quarries Company Limited for the financial year ended September 30th, 2020. 8 to 9. The audited financial statements of the University of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial years ended September 30th, 2017 and 2018. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that papers 1 to 9 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee.
Honourable members, the question is that papers 1 to 9 be referred to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. The Minister of Education.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honour to lay the administrative report of the National Training Agency for the fiscal year 2018-2019. Thank you.
Questions on notice?
The Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, there are no questions for oral answer. There is one question for written answer, question number 174, and the answer has already been laid. Thank you.
Public business, private members' business, motions.
Honourable members. Honourable members, the debate on the following motion, which was in progress when the House adjourned on Friday, May 26, 2023, will be resumed. Be it resolved that this House express its lack of confidence in the Minister of National Security. 10 members have already contributed to this debate. I now call upon the member for Chaguanas West, who has 29 minutes of original speaking time remaining. Member for Chaguanas West.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to continue contributing to this very important motion brought by my colleague, member for Barataria San Madam Speaker, on the last occasion when this motion was in session, I did contribute for a minute or two, but Madam Speaker, I would like to revisit the words or the recitals of this motion, just to bring our minds back into focus and in context of what we are debating. And Madam Speaker, very quickly, whereas the Minister of National Security is responsible for ensuring public safety by the maintenance of law and order and the effective oversight of the national security infrastructure, and whereas the Minister of National Security, through his vast and continued incompetence, has mismanaged the organs and departments of national security, And whereas the Minister of National Security has unequivocally demonstrated his inability to competently execute his duties, be it resolved that this House express its lack of confidence in the Minister of National Security. Madam Speaker, as I contribute to this continuing debate, the overall theme of my contribution will be that there must be accountability. And it gives me absolutely no pleasure to debate this motion here today. And let me be clear, Madam Speaker, this is not a personal motion about the Minister of National Security, member for Laventille West. It's not a motion about whether he is qualified or not to occupy his ministerial portfolio, or whether he cares about his job or not. I believe, Madam Speaker, the people of Trinidad and Tobago can easily deduce those things and have done so already. This motion is simply about one word, and that is, Madam Speaker, accountability. Madam Speaker, when we look at the presentations of our contributions from members on the other side, I think they have ignored this word or this theme or this concept of accountability. You see, in this House, we all sit as elected members who have taken a sworn oath to serve the best interest of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, a country's Minister of National Security, whosoever he or she may be, is tasked with the responsibility of, and let me repeat that word, responsibility. Whosoever is the Minister of National Security, their responsibility is to manage the security of the nation, and in so doing, keep the people safe. People in our nation are living in a state of fear, and that is putting it mildly, Madam Speaker. Last year, there were over 600 murders recorded in our country. That's a shameful and unholy record in our history. Daylight robberies, home invasions, murders, gang-related activity are all now synonymous with life in Trinidad and Tobago, just as we would speak of doubles and bacon shack. I see my colleague, member for Diego Martin, he's smiling at this. But just as we like our doubles and bacon shack, we are now somehow hampered because of the criminal activity. Of course, our citizens, Madam Speaker, don't expect Minister Hines to personally go out and solve the murders. What they expect, however, is a government minister to reassure them that his ministry is working on strategies and policies to save lives. And as I say strategies and policies, I want to just respond to something I had heard. At first, when I heard it being said once, stated once by the previous speaker, member for Port of Spain South, I thought it was just an error, but he kept repeating it, Madam Speaker. It was disappointing to hear that the member of Parliament for Port of Spain South, that he was, at the last session, he appears not to understand how our system of government work. In that, he kept saying that, and referring to several pieces of legislation. And in so doing, he was saying, based on these pieces of legislation, the government has been forming policy and then seeking to implement it. Now, I think that that is putting, as they say, Madam Speaker, in common parlance, you're dropping the gear into reverse. We have a system of governance whereby it is the cabinet, the government of the day, will set policy, Madam Speaker. Whatever they see as necessary for good governance, they formulate policy. There's a way that the executive arm and the legislative arm operate. So when the cabinet and the government formulates the policy, it is there that they will now use that policy to inform the legislative framework. So it is quite on the reverse. But why do I make reference to that very quickly? It is because it is telling as to why it is the government does not have any control on the spiral in crime. They are working in reverse. So I want to set that on the record. So I say, as I was saying before, Madam Speaker, that people don't expect Minister of National Security, member for Laventille West, to personally go and solve crime. They want to know what the elected representatives who are being paid with their taxpayer dollars, what these representatives are actually doing. And they want them to do their jobs. It is quite amazing that the Minister of National Security came to this debate in an earlier session not to answer to the people, Madam Speaker, of Trinidad and Tobago about what it is he is doing to keep them safe, but rather engage in a self-serving diatribe attempting to pass off his responsibility for his failings to others. And if I may quote a word that he used in his contribution, if anything, that is what I would call evilousness. That is evilousness, Madam Speaker. Now, when the minister fails, he is not failing himself or his Prime Minister or the Cabinet, both of whom and their colleagues enjoy their own personal security details, certainly the Prime Minister and the Minister for National Security, paid for by taxpayers. They are failing the people of the country. If the Minister of National Security no longer feel the need to stand in this House to be accountable to the people who employ them, then we all might as well close down, Madam Speaker, and I say so respectfully, this House and go home. The theme is accountability. If the members opposite do not take this motion seriously, then they should stop saying they care about the people and that they care only about themselves. Madam Speaker, it is telling that none of the minister's colleagues could defend him from their government. The Member of Parliament for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, stood for 45 minutes and was not able to provide the House with any proof that the Minister of National Security is competent and capable in performing his role as Minister of National Security. He spent a considerable amount of time speaking about the crime symposium, which has yet to produce a single improvement or tangible action by resolution or bill before this Parliament to bring any kind of relief to the citizens to sleep soundly at night without the fear of home invasion or of theft of their property or of simply being murdered mercilessly. Madam Speaker, imagine members on that side, they spoke at length. Yes, please, Madam Speaker. Imagine speaking at length about the technical points of a parliamentary debate and policy making instead of giving any credence to the ability of the minister in question in this motion to perform his job. This motion continuing before us here today, Madam Speaker, is not simply about the competency of the Minister of National Security. It is about accountability of public officers. The confidence citizens of our nation have in those entrusted to serve them. And most of all, it is about the safety and security of our citizens. I want to reference, Madam Speaker, with your permission, an article which appeared in the Daily Express of 14th April 2023. And it was a letter to the editor, and it is titled, An Accountant for National Security. That is the title. Daily Express, 14th April 2023. And I quote, "It would appear that Minister of National Security Fitzgerald Hines has the easiest job portfolio, since every time he's asked about the escalating crime situation, he simply replies that he's only responsible for providing budgeted resources, nothing more, nothing less. Maybe we should get rid of that ministerial position and let someone with an accounting background handle the job, as it is such a simplified job to perform." The author, I don't quote anymore, but the author is J. Deering of Maraval. I want to begin, Madam Speaker, by reminding the Minister of National Security of his statement last year, 20th December 2022, at a media conference at the Ministry of National Security, Port of Spain headquarters. And this was during the handing over of the draft firearm users license policy and the draft National Border Security Policy by the Office of Law Enforcement. And it goes, I quote, "I came into this business understanding that 70% of society does not support this effort or want to see us succeed." I go no further, Madam Speaker, simply because other members would have referenced this particular public discourse. But what I want to say is that that statement perfectly sums up the overarching philosophy of the minister as well as the government. and that is instead of trying, Madam Speaker, instead of trying to tell the population of the role that they intend to undertake, knowing that we have a runaway crime situation, knowing that we need to have public safety, what we are getting is a deflection of accountability, which they should own up to, a deflection onto the population. So this is something that is very important, and that seems to be the philosophy, please, Madam Speaker, that you have a deflection which is always taking place. So instead of trying to win over public trust, instead of outlining plans and proposals to reassure the public that the government will keep them safe, what you have is a Minister of National Security starting the job, blaming the majority of the population and cynically suggesting that they want to see him fail. That is the philosophy. Despite this country recording over 605 murders last year, Madam Speaker, it was higher than that, but I use that as a conservative and somewhat safe figure in the context of what the statistics from the TTPS, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, put out. Sorry. And 274 murders thus far for this year, which already, Madam Speaker, if we look at the duration of time this year as compared to 2022, we have surpassed the number of murders already with 274. This minister believes that he, not the 274 or the 605 plus last year, these statistics, according to the minister, he believes that he is the biggest victim in our nation. So I want to assure the Minister of National Security, Honorable Member for Laventille West, that the entire nation who are now living in fear, who have lost loved ones due to criminals, who have lost their businesses due to criminals, are not against him in the way he thinks. They are frustrated, they feel angry and feel helpless, and they simply want a Minister of National Security who can do the job. So, Madam Speaker, this is not about crime politics. This is about the people who have elected us as honorable members of this House, and what they expect from each and every member of this House is accountability. And this motion, I commend the member for Barataria Sanwan. I think the motion is one of accountability. I think it is one which is an endorsement of the role of the opposition in holding those in government accountable. And so I endorse this motion. I commend it. I ask all members in this House to think about those who have lost their loved ones, to think about whether or not we need to have someone in that office of Ministry of National Security who can get a handle on the crime situation, instill public trust and confidence, and ensure that people are safe once again in this country. Madam Speaker, having said that, I move a little bit away from the theme of accountability to treat with some of the issues of crime, but insofar as it relates to women. And there's a reason for it, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I had the opportunity to travel to England, to London, in the past week. And I know members on the other side don't like to hear this word or this name, but I was fortunate and honored to appear before the Honorable, the Law Lords of the Privy Council. And whilst I was there, Madam Speaker, I was requested to attend a meeting before the BBC, the British Broadcasting Network. And it was interesting, some of the matters that were raised in that particular conversation. And of course, I at no time represented myself to be representing the government of Trinidad and Tobago. It was simply because the BBC knew I was in England and they wanted to speak on certain matters. Madam Speaker, one of the matters which arose was an article entitled "The Caribbean Island of Trinidad grapples with national crisis of violence. This is the Guardian, the UK Guardian. It is a Friday, 16th June 2023 article, and the author of the article is Tracy McVeigh. My belief is that Tracy McVeigh is one of the leading editors in Global Matters. And what is having entitled it, the subtitle, Killings of Women and Girls in Trinidad and Tobago have reached an all-time high while police and politicians are failing to tackle rising crime rates. That is the subtitle. And so, Madam Speaker, I don't wish to, it is a lengthy article. I do not wish to cite, ad nauseum from it. They have referenced in this article the numerous photos of missing women appearing on social media with regularity. Headlines of shootings are weekly. For women, it is a national crisis, and in this regard, they have cited the local writer and lecturer at the Institute for Gender and Development Studies at UWI, that is Dr. Gabriel Hussein. One of the window captions says, "Violence is so endemic that its reduction and prevention should be treated as a national emergency." And again, in this regard, they quote Dr. Gabriel Hussein, local UWI professor, UWI lecturer. One part of the article which I wish to cite, however, with your permission, and I quote, "In March, the police commissioner, Earl Herwood Christopher, said an evil had spread over the land and that reducing murder rates was a bit beyond the force's capabilities. An initial government response to the uproar over the murders of Riley and Barrett was to announce that the use of pepper spray by women would be legalized. Later, the Attorney General, Faris Al-Rawi, said permits would be needed." I'm quoting from the article still. "There have been no attempts to legislate or control the illegal PH private hire taxi drivers, who are widely regarded as a risk to the safety of women and girls in a country where public transport is limited and expensive imported cars are beyond the means of many." I continue. "The PH drivers are a major problem that could be easily resolved with political will." And this is a quotation from Bharat Nahus, who is a prominent, I don't want to use the word popular, but a prominent social activist in Trinidad and Tobago. And they continue with the quote of Bharat Nahus. "So many girls are being taken away and never coming back. For women to feel they can't go to their own yard or to the mall without parents dropping them off is heartbreaking. The government does everything in terms of stacking things against an honest citizen." So this article, published prominently in the UK Guardian, is citing local contributions on the crime situation. Bharat Nahus says stories abound of rape victims being turned away by police. She describes one woman who had been abducted and raped, who was dismissed by local officers as having had a fling, another who ran naked and bloody into a police station and was sent home to put clothes on. And so I stopped there with the article in terms of quoting one social activist. They continue with that the fact is that when questioned about feminicide in April 2022, the Prime Minister, I am quoting now, Keith Rowley, appeared to shrug off the issue with a dismissive, and they quote the Prime Minister's words, "We are a violent society." That assessment is shared by Claire Guy Allen, the police superintendent in charge of TNT's Special Victim Unit, although she aims to tackle the problem. So what this article shows, 16th of June, and this is an intervening article between when we last debated this motion and today, it shows that you have persons who are looking on and they are watching the crime situation, and they are not simply prepared as commentators and or as investigative journalists to simply say we are treating with a global crime situation. They are seeing it in terms of going back to what they think are the causes, the origins of the spiral in crime, and they are speaking about whether or not something can be done about it, They are commenting on what is being done by the authorities who are in charge. And pivoting on that, or using that as a platform, Madam Speaker, I want to talk a little bit about the crime statistics insofar as it treats with women in our society. Madam Speaker, I must say that for myself, I have attempted, premised on persons within my constituency of Chaguanas West, have written several articles on crimes against women with the hope and the expectation that it will be treated with by the Minister of National Security and the other members, the cabinet and the government as a whole. Now, when we look at the statistics, Madam Speaker, which come out of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, these statistics, Madam Speaker, I want to say very clearly, they are peppered. It's not something that is in black and white, and it adorns a flow chart, and it is there when we need to write a report or we need to compile something for a thesis, or those who are pursuing a PhD. These statistics are peppered with real cases. And Madam Speaker, I want to say that it is impossible to talk about violence against women in our society without mentioning certain names. Those names are, Madam Speaker, Asami, who was strangled in the savannah. We have Marcia, who was stabbed and burnt in her bed. Pixie, raped and strangled with her school belt. Baby Amy, raped to death at home. Shanice, gunned down in Mount St. George. Candace and Karen, raped and stabbed in front of their children. Kiana, 6, raped, battered and stuffed in a barrel. Grandmother Norma, raped and beaten at home after church. Shakuntala, raped and strangled, her nude body stripped green among the stalks of the cane field. These names, Madam Speaker, are unforgettable. And as I say, we cannot talk about crime against women without repeating some of these names. Names unforgettable, rolling off our fingertips of easy recall, but still only the tips of murders, all-girl roll call. And why do I say that, Madam Speaker? These highlight some of the most heinous crimes which have occurred in the last 2 years, 2 to 3 years. So I am not pontificating what may have happened in the last decade. I am not referring back for political purposes to talk about 2010 to 2015 as versus 2015 to 2020. I am speaking about years where we have seen that the murder rate has surpassed all other years. The time period in question, we have surpassed all murders, all homicide numbers. And why we have to look at it is why we are here today, one of accountability. Madam Speaker, Asami, Kezia, Roxanne Warren, Andrea Barrett, as I have mentioned and was mentioned in the UK Guardian, these are all names which they have seen a most brutal end to their beautiful lives. When we look at the murders, Madam Speaker, I have with me the reported crime and problem analysis unit, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, data source population estimate Central Statistical Office, prepared by Population, Social and Vital Statistics Division, Central Statistical Office. And this has been cited in newspaper articles. So I didn't just simply take the newspaper article, I went back to the source to make sure that when we quote it here in the House, Madam Speaker, it is in fact accurate. And when we look at the statistics, 57 women were murdered in 2022. This was actually the subject of an Express newspaper's 1st January 2023 article. 57 women killed in 2022. Figures consistent over last 6 years. That is the title. This figure is based on statistics by the Sunday Express from the TTPS Problem Analysis Branch. 15 of these killings were the result of domestic violence, while 10 were the result of gang-related activities. With 57 murders reported, the number of women killed over the last 6 years from violent confrontations was pushed to 307. That is a really startling figure. In 2017, there were 496 murders, 52 of which were women. In 2018, there were 518 murders and 47 female victims. In 2019, there were 539 murders and 64 female victims. In 2020, there were 399 murders, of which 54 were women. And in 2021, there were 448 murders, of which 33 were women. For 2022, there had been, up to the time of, this is the 1st of January, there had been 632 murders, 57 of them were women. This represented an estimated 9.46% of total deaths. And they quoted criminologist Dr. Randy Sipasad. Coincidentally, it is important to reference not necessarily a name of the criminologist, but that this particular criminologist had in fact put forward by way of his own reports and public utterances what would have happened for 2022. And the prediction was that you would have had in excess of 600 murders if serious intervention had not been engaged by the government. And that in fact came to pass, Madam Speaker, unfortunately. This criminologist said that unless you have serious intervention, serious embarkation on serious measures, what would be expected to happen in 2023 is in excess of 710 murders, homicides. So this is something that we have to be very careful about. But going back to the article, Dr. Randy Sipasad told the Sunday Express in November that while every death was a tragic and unfortunate incident, the statistics showed that annually the number of women killed has remained consistent during the 6-year period, an estimated 10% a year increase. So, Madam Speaker, this does not bode well for...
Honourable Member, you have 1 more minute of ordinary time. You're entitled to 15 more minutes of extended time if you so wish.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With your permission, may I have the extended time, please?
You may proceed.
Thank you. So, Madam Speaker, the point that I have made here is that what we are seeing is that it is not a generic statement to say that crime is on the rise. What we are seeing is that we are seeing an associated increase in crimes against children, crimes against females, women in the society. And a 10% increase per annum is not something that we can allow to continue for any period of time or just simply let it sit by indefinitely. So, Madam Speaker, we have calls that are being made by the population, hence the reason for Member for Barataria Salwan and the opposition bringing this motion. What are those calls, Madam Speaker? Accountability, as I have indicated before. We are receiving urgent and vital calls to arms. They are seeking compassion by those who are in authority that we can engage to treat with this crime situation. What the people want, Madam Speaker, is they want an abandonment of the rhetoric, the political rhetoric, the evasiveness with which the Minister of National Security treats with the increases in crime. They want to see meaningful change, Madam Speaker. So they want to see changes in terms of how we implement laws, because that is something, as I indicated before, it seems as though the government may be in reverse, but just to set it back straight, policies being formulated, being reflected in legislation, and then we must see proper implementation by the arms who the legislation governs. So we need to see that. We need to see changes in policing. And as I said, Madam Speaker, when I say that, I have already categorized that nobody is being facetious in even remotely suggesting that we expect the Honourable Minister to go out there and be solving the crimes himself. But there must be some comfort by his demeanor, by his language, by his actions, that he is in fact engaging in a process that will see some semblance of the sweet Trinidad and Tobago that we knew it to be in years gone by. Madam Speaker, what we expect to hear, and we have not heard from members of the government, is to put it frankly, a devastating analysis of how the criminal justice system is failing these women and girls, and why we need to speak about it openly, what needs to change. I want to surmise, and I want to say clearly that what needs to be the starting change is the removal of member for Laventille West as Minister of National Security. When you read that Guardian article, Madam Speaker, and several other articles, what is the image being put forward, not by this opposition? It is very easy for members on the other side to say, well, the opposition want to do this and the opposition want to bring shame to the country. No, unless they want to say on record that the UK Guardian is a member of the UNC. That is not so. What the image, this is what we have to get away from the political rhetoric. What these news agencies and what the investigative journalists, and in the case of the criminologists like Dr. Randy C. Prasad, what they are seeing is they are seeing a picture being painted. It is now spilling over into an image being painted of Trinidad and Tobago, which is not a nice one, that men somehow in the society have all gone violent. And we know that is not so. So we need to arrest some of these matters. Madam Speaker, there's a quote, "Not all men practice violence against women, but all women live with the threat of male violence every single day." And that is a quote of Fuad Al-Akbarov. So I repeat it, Madam Speaker, and this is applicable to our society. Not all men practice violence against women, but the reality of where we are is that all women live with the threat of male violence every single day. This is the reality that is Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, I have mentioned the cases of the names. It was not to incentivize the debate, and it was certainly not meant to bring any particular flavor. But as I said, the statistics are such that we need to put names to it, because then it just comes across as something cast in black and white. And what these statistics show, and the names that I have mentioned, is that they put forward a terrifying reminder of the dangers faced by women. All of those names that I cited, these women were basically going about their ordinary lives on a daily basis when they met their unfortunate end. So when their deaths, the details of their deaths emerged, what did we see? We saw that we had a runaway crime situation and the criminal elements being totally out of control, totally unchecked, and they themselves have no fear for the law and they have no conscience of their own. So grief of the population is now turning into one of anger. Revelations that one person may have been kidnapped, raped, or murdered. These revelations have now become all too familiar, at the risk of some persons, and I dare say it may be that the member for Laventille West finds himself in this situation as Minister of National Security, that he has been hardened to these instances of killings. And that is a most unfortunate situation, because the numbers are just simply too high. We have seen red flag, Madam Speaker, red flag after red flag being raised, yet being ignored by Minister of National Security. So I want to say today that if anything at all, if any message I can make in this contribution here, is that the deaths of all of our citizens, particularly the young children and the women, their deaths, Madam Speaker, will continue to stain our national conscience. And that is why, if member for Laventille West, Minister of National Security, has any conscience of his own in terms of being a public officer and being accountable to the people, he would do the honorable thing and allow this debate not to continue, but to simply resign his position. Madam Speaker, even when appropriate laws are in place, because that is the PNM government's machinery at work, that we don't support critical legislation. Yet we have had, I remember for St. Augustine, cited some 20 pieces of legislation in the last session, critical pieces of legislation which we had contributed to. But that is a propaganda or a narrative which the members on the other side like to bring up again and again. We don't accept that, but even so, when you have appropriate pieces of legislation in place, what is critical is the enforcement of those pieces of legislation. And that is not what we are seeing under the auspices of the Minister of National Security. Those laws themselves can be rendered meaningless. And I dare say that is what we are experiencing now in our society. We, Madam Speaker, have been seeing increases in the numbers of murder rates. We have been seeing increases in the number of crimes, if not homicides, but crimes, and these are still considered serious crimes against our women in our society. And this is where I feel, Madam Speaker, it pains our national conscience the most when we are not dealing with that situation. I am not in any way belittling a drive-by gang shootout, which will kill fellow members of another gang. I'm not belittling and so, trying to say that that is of no consequence. What I am, however, saying is that when we deal with these crimes against women, these are the ones that will continue to stain our national conscience. Madam Speaker, what do the statistics say? I have already said that it has shown a 10% per annum increase in the crimes against women, from serious to sexual crimes as well. And this is, if we are to get into the fuller picture, time doesn't permit it today. But I think that it is something that we need to have addressed. We have not seen Member for Laventille West being able to do so. And this is why this motion is so important, because being able to manage, whether by way of micromanaging or otherwise, being able to manage the apparatus that fall under you is the exact reason why we say that someone is the line minister, that someone is the operational minister in charge. They are the ones who are responsible, but we are not seeing that this particular minister is, as we say in local parlance, grabbing the bull by the horns and treating with the problems at hand. Statistics tell us the story where violence against women is concerned. These are statistics which are public, but it cannot convey the enormity of the human impact. If we get into the human impact of these crimes against the woman, that, Madam Speaker, is, as we say, another ball game, which we would have to get into. So, Madam Speaker, I would like to say that when we look at the different communities, and I reference Chaguanas West in particular, it would be most inaccurate to say that we as members of this House on this side, to say that the people in our constituencies, that we are not helping or assisting the police in trying to treat with crime. Whilst I was abroad, I saw my sister colleague, member for Chaguanas East, participating in a crime meeting, a crime town hall meeting. I myself, Madam Speaker, as a member of Parliament, was responsible. I don't want to use the word responsible as though it is something I'm ascribing to myself. The community partnered with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to be able to exchange what they felt were ideas that could help the police service. And I want to say that I commend the police members who participated in those meetings, that they themselves were open, they were receptive to what was being told to them, and they themselves had tips to put across to the members of the community. So what you have is you are seeing at the different levels where members of the public, members as constituents and members of Parliament, certainly on this side, we have been engaging in assisting the police service in respect of what we can do at our level. Engaging in what we can do at our level, Madam Speaker. So it would be wholly inaccurate to take a position, which I've been hearing on the other side, that we are not prepared to help solve the problem. So, Madam Speaker, what we need is, if the members of the public are doing their duty in trying to bring down crime, if you have the members or the activists, the social activists doing their duty as members of the public, if you have those persons who are the governing personnel of, like, for example, Crime Stoppers and other NGOs getting down into the trenches, doing their part and trying to assist the community, if you have the businessmen who are assisting those who cannot afford things like the fog horns, the loud horns, to help people equip themselves and their homes with apparatus to somehow deter criminal elements. If you have all of these entities doing their part, what I want to conclude by saying is that what we need, the only recurring decimal we need removed, is the Minister of National Security. He, as member who is heading the National Security Ministry, is not doing his part, and his duties are failing. And therefore, what the members of the public and what this country needs is a total endorsement of this House that he must be removed. This motion of no confidence must be upheld against the honourable member, and he should be removed as Minister of National Security. Madam Speaker, I thank you for the time that I have had today to contribute. Thank you.
Member for Lahokata, Talparo.
Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to join in this debate. Madam Speaker, the UNC is well known for their crime politics. And as we see local government elections in the air, we understand that they will fall upon their usual style of attempting to instill fear in the population. It is in this hope that they continue to speak about crime every time they have an opportunity to speak. The very people who had 5 ministers of national security when they were in office. I've heard of governments collapsing in office across the world, Madam Speaker. But what we are witnessing in Trinidad and Tobago at this time is an opposition collapsing upon itself. Falling apart at the seams, with a leader fully asleep, and while members at all levels leave the UNC in droves. To find purpose and to find direction that only this PNM government can offer. We welcome those who will come. We'll accept some, and we will certainly not accept others. Madam Speaker, would you believe I drove past MacBean recently in Couva? The traditional headquarters of the UNC over the years. Would you believe, Madam Speaker, that even that traditional headquarters that they no longer occupy, that whole building is now painted in bright PNM red? The UNC is collapsing and has collapsed. And no amount of fear tactics will fool Trinidad and Tobago citizens into returning the UNC to the corridors of power in this country. Madam Speaker, this debate has been marked, if anything, not by any alleged incompetence of the honourable member of National Security, who is doing an excellent job at what he's doing, but a clear agenda by the opposition, both in and out of Parliament, to utilize crime and criminality as their vehicle to maintain relevance in this country. It is an agenda, Madam Speaker, not based on hopes and the aspirations of our people, or designed to share with our population their plans for the development of Trinidad and Tobago. When they speak, they offer no alternative. When bills are brought to this Parliament so that we can take some serious action against the criminals in this country, they lend no support. They use the opportunity at every turn to frustrate the efforts of the government, only to be able to come back to the country to speak about crime and crime and crime, but the evidence is clear. At every opportunity to support the government in its fight against the criminal elements in this country, the UNC have fallen down on the job, Madam Speaker. They have failed in this quest before, and as sure as night follows day, they will fail again, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, many of my colleagues have spoken before and demonstrated in their contribution the government approach to crime. It is not an isolated approach. It is a whole-of-government approach. And this feature of a whole-of-government and that collaborative effort is clearly something that is alien to the members opposite us, and certainly alien to their absentee leader. It is not surprising, as they continue to demonstrate their inability to enter the corridors of power and to govern in Trinidad and Tobago. They simply cannot understand how a collective government program can have multiple impacts. So they focus their attention as often as they can on the Minister of National Security and on crime-related matters in this country. It is this very short-sighted nature that has caused the country to lose billions of dollars in investments over the years. Because when they speak about Trinidad and Tobago, the impression they give to the international community is as though this country is a place to be feared, as though this country is not a place for safe investments. And therefore, it gives the government additional work to be able to go out into the international community and attract investments for the development of this country. They lack patriotism, they lack direction, they lack foresight, they lack ideas. And as I repeat, they are falling apart at the seams. It is this narrow-mindedness that has resulted in them discarding the Vision 2020 document, a policy document of the PNM government designed to take Trinidad and Tobago to developed status.
Madam Speaker, I rise on Standing Order 48.1 relevance, please. This has nothing relevant to this motion.
Okay, so, member, if you could tie it quickly into the substance of this motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You see, Madam Speaker, the mover of this motion somehow refuses to understand that the criminal elements in this country who continue to attract our young people into a life of crime. It is dealing with crime is not only about detection and arrest and putting our young people in prison. It is about creating a safe space where they can develop as active and sustainable citizens of this country. And that is what we are about as a government. Madam Speaker, like the Ministry of Education, like the Ministry of Trade and Industry, like the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, like the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, all the programs that exist under the ministry that I have the opportunity to lead at this point in time, all these programs are designed to combat a number of the social deficiencies in our society. Deficiencies that have accrued over time and that will not be resolved overnight. It is these deficiencies, many of them, many of the situations created by the very government that they were part of on more than one occasion in this country. The sad truth, Madam Speaker, is that the opposition members know this. The mover of the motion is an attorney himself. He's aware of the lengthy delays in the criminal justice system and the negative impact of these delays on the administration of justice. And yet, as I mentioned earlier, they have refused on countless occasions to support legislation that will remove the power from the criminals. Legislation that will restrict bail for persons arrested for gun-related crimes. And as I speak about gun-related crimes, I noticed in the media recently where one of their so-called nominees was arrested for gun crimes in a campaign in Tunapuna, all dressed in yellow. Do you know, Madam Speaker, the minute the gentleman was arrested, they distanced themselves from him. They abandoned him. But, Madam Speaker, yet they come into the Parliament to speak about crime and what the PNM is doing about crime. Well, we know what the police is doing about crime. Madam Speaker, this government is this government that brought legislation to this Parliament to abolish preliminary inquiries and to bring legislation that will allow a defendant, if he so chooses, to have a judge-alone trial. All of these matters intended to improve on the criminal justice system. And yet, with all that fortitude that he could muster, the member for Barataria Sanwa places the blame of the country's current crime situation on the shoulders of the Minister of National Security alone. Madam Speaker, the youth population of this country is about 1/3 the size of the entire population. And the statistics are available and clear that many of our young people are grappling with development issues, that many of our young people have fallen victim to crime, that many of our young people have been recruited by criminal elements in this country, that many of our young people continue to grapple with youth delinquency. We are mindful of some of the root causes of delinquency. And therefore, we have introduced programs. The question of crime fighting, Madam Speaker, does not, as I mentioned before, only involved on the extreme end, the question of arrest and prison time. It involves getting into the development of our young people to steer them away from a life of crime. And it is the reason why this Ministry of Youth Development was established, one of the main reasons, to make sure that we have available to our youths training programs geared towards providing them with the opportunities to skill themselves, to upgrade their technical learning and so forth, so that they can enter the job market and be productive citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. That kind of foresight and thinking does not exist with our members on the opposite side. And so it falls to a government like the one that we have now in office to do what has to be done for our young people in this country. More specifically, Madam Speaker, we have targeted 8 strategic priorities for sustainable youth development to make sure that when our young people look at what opportunities are available to them, we have it available to them, Madam Speaker. In the areas outlined in, for instance, our youth policy, speaks to harnessing youth social and intellectual capital. I would certainly make an available copy of the youth policy of Trinidad and Tobago, a copy available to the member for Barataria Sanwa. Creating safe spaces, peaceful communities and environments, creating an enabling environment for positive youth development, emphasizing youth participation in agricultural production and food security. Madam Speaker, every single program initiated by this ministry is underpinned by these priorities and is already contributing to a reduction in youth deviant behavior and delinquency. That is what we are aiming for. We believe, and we firmly believe, that for every one young person who joins or completes one of these programs, It is one less person available to the criminal elements for recruitment. For every one graduate out of this program, that is one less person likely to be enticed into a life of crime. And this, Madam Speaker, is the government's approach. Not a piecemeal, make it up as we go along, attack the Minister of National Security, talk about crime every opportunity you get, but bring no ideas to the table. I listen to the contributions. And nowhere inside there can you find workable solutions being put forward by the members on the other side. Madam Speaker, this is not a T20 or T10. This is not even a 50 overs one day. This is a test cricket match. And unless my colleague from Barataria Sawa is prepared to come out on the field and last the entire duration of the match, then I suggest that we may have a golden pen waiting for the member for Barataria Sawa, where you can find good governance. Madam Speaker, we did not get here overnight. We did not get here overnight. And we will not get out of this situation overnight. It requires all of our citizens to take part in making sure that we have a safe space in Trinidad and Tobago for all of our citizens. If I'm to touch on the programs I mentioned earlier, that offers guidance and support to our youth who, many of them, might be struggling in less than perfect homes or communities. By connecting our young people with positive adult role models, we offer many mentorship programs to help foster a sense of belonging and self-worth. And that, of course, will also reduce the likelihood of these persons moving into delinquency and deviant behavior. Madam Speaker, we have proven that another way in which we can impact youth deviance is by providing opportunities for skill building and for education. It is a proven fact that programs which focus on education, job training, and life skills development help young people to prepare for successful and fulfilling lives. When young people have access to the opportunities that I've outlined, we expect that they will quite likely not engage in delinquency and in deviant behavior. They develop positive self-esteem, have a greater sense of purpose, and could therefore envision greater opportunities for a brighter future. Many of us, all of us, on both sides represent different constituencies. We engage with all of our citizens, all of our constituents. Many of them come to members of parliament and would speak to you about situations that are occurring in their life. As a member of parliament, sometimes you may even be aware of some young person coming to you trying to form some direction, or being somebody who's actually being targeted by members of the criminal world. And you have to be able to counsel them and speak to them about how they live a better and fruitful life in this country. I mentioned earlier, Madam Speaker, of the strategic priorities that the government has outlined in the development of our young people to gear them up as productive citizens. And one of the areas that we have put significant emphasis on is our agricultural sector, as we steer our young people into that direction. A very robust program of youth in agriculture. And therefore, we launched a program called the Youth Agricultural Homestead Program. And it's quite unfortunate that as we attempt to roll out that program, it is a program that has come under significant attack from the opposition in this country. And not only the opposition, the very criminal elements that the member seeks, the actions of which the member seeks to place at the foot of the Minister of National Security, those elements have gone beyond the call of duty to attempt to stifle and to frustrate this particular youth intervention program. I wish to quote, Madam Speaker, from a letter I received recently from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Victim and Witness Protection Unit. This letter demonstrates unequivocally that contrary to what the MP for Barataria Samoa would have us believe, the approach to fighting crime must be multi-pronged and interdisciplinary. In the letter dated the 23rd of this year, the writer indicates as follows. This unit, I quote now, is seeking to partner with your ministry on the Youth Agricultural Homestead Program. Given the ranges of vulnerabilities facing our clients, we are requesting your kind consideration towards 15% of the placement of the next cohort of the YAP, that be assigned to young persons impacted by crime. A placement on this social intervention project will certainly have far-reaching positive consequences towards changing the trajectory of our young men and women who have become vulnerable to crime and its effects. This program would indeed provide invaluable opportunities for themselves and their families to stifle the effects and vulnerabilities observed to be affecting young crime victims in the country. Madam Speaker, the author goes on to say that the VSWU is interested in partnering with the ministry on other programs. We believe that these programs can lead to fundamental changes in the lives of many young persons plagued by criminal activities, thus facilitating their journey towards healthy and productive lives, end of quote. I'm pleased to indicate, Madam Speaker, that we took that request very seriously, and we gave serious consideration to it, and we have agreed to allocate to this arm of the TTPS some of the spaces in the next cohort of the Youth Agricultural Homestead Program. And that is an example, Madam Speaker, of how we on this side of the House are treating with the issue of crime and crime fighting. It is not, as the member for Barataria Samoa would have us believe, that crime fighting is somehow a job that resides only for the minister, the line minister, to execute. It is all of our responsibility. It is a whole of government approach, and it is a whole of opposition support and approach for policies that the government will put in place for crime fighting. It is the responsibility of every citizen. And if they do not understand that, and if they are not part of the solution, then, Madam Speaker, it is clear to all of Trinidad and Tobago that they are part of the problem. Programs like these have been a phenomenal success with our young people. It was only earlier this month that we graduated 168 young men and women who are now successful to move on to be successful agro-entrepreneurs. And, Madam Speaker, that gives them some kind of purpose and direction. It is very unlikely that we'll see any of these young persons listed in the statistics as pointed out or that we were reminded about by the member for Barataria Samoa. We will expand this program, as we have already done in some areas, to include a part-time and another full-time cohort, Madam Speaker. Unlike the members opposite, when they had their turn of decrease, it's always very interesting to listen to members on the opposite side. Some of them are new, but some of them have been around for a long time. And they know that when they had their turn at the crease, they destroyed all viable options for young people that were put in place by the previous PNM government. Our current party leadership and government leadership, led by Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley, is certainly moving in the right direction by creating additional opportunities for young people and promoting agriculture as a viable option. The impact can only be positive for our economy and for our people. And so, Madam Speaker, it is not the only program, but I need not, I've mentioned to the Parliament before many of the programs that the government have in place for young people. In terms of the agriculture programs, we also have a shade house program doing a similar kind of work. Youth cooperatives, training young people in aquaculture. And we do this in conjunction with the Ministry of Agriculture, focusing on our young people between the ages of 18 to 35. I visited the prison some time ago to speak to some of the inmates there. And when I looked at the audience, it pained me to see the amount of young persons that constituted that audience I was speaking to at the time. But what it did is it encouraged me to put out more effort to make sure and start the reversal of that cycle. There are many things for which the party in opposition, of which a member for Barataria is a member, there are many things for which they must carry the blame for abandoning our young people and their development in the past. It is sheer hypocrisy for the member to bring this motion in an attempt to wash their hands of the responsibility for our current situation in this country, which did not start with the PNM returning to office. Madam Speaker, we'll remember that it was the former government under the stewardship of the leader and member for Siparia who shut down every youth camp in this country under their disastrous tenure. That they did that. When traditionally young people coming out of school who may not have gotten their full certificates, etc., would have gone to these institutions, gotten access to technical vocational learning, moved on to either become young entrepreneurs. I met one recently on a flight from Tobago. He now resides in New York. He is doing a very successful business in domestic electrical wiring and so forth, out in New York. And he said to me, he got those skills at the youth camp in Chatham. He's now out there doing a successful business. It was the government of the UNC that shut down all the youth camps in this country. But what the good news for young people is that the mess that they created, we who are in power now will do all in our power to clean that up. And so, Madam Speaker, the government will reopen all of the youth camps closed down by the UNC. All in Chatham, we will certainly reopen that camp. You know, Madam Speaker, when we announced to the country that we were going to reopen the Chatham camp for the young people in the Southland, and the project started, the opposition asked many questions about that project. And unfortunately, for the young people of Chatham, there was an attempt to sabotage that project by lighting the camp on fire. That will not disrupt or dissuade us from completing that project and others like it. we have also started work at Presto Presto to refurbish and reopen that camp for young people. We have also started work at Shagaramas Convention Center to convert that into a youth apprenticeship and development center.
Honorable, you have 1 more minute of ordinary speaking time available to you. You're entitled to 15 more additional minutes if you wish.
I thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I will certainly be using those minutes.
Please continue.
I thank you. Because the people of Trinidad and Tobago need to know. They need to understand. For those who are likely to be fooled by the old talk from the UNC, they need to know of what the government is doing. They need to understand that there are many opportunities available for young people. I was saying earlier on that we will repurpose in Shagaramas that convention center that when they were in government, they gave it away. Luckily, we were able to get that property, that historical property. They want to talk about crime? That was a crime. We are about to celebrate 50 years of the CARICOM, and that will be celebrated right here in Trinidad and Tobago. We are able, as part of the ceremony, to go down to Shagaramas, and as we remember what our leaders of the past did. Had it been up to the UNC, we would not have access to that facility. It would have been owned by some private citizen, not for the benefit. But what this government will do is open that facility for the development of our young people from all over the east-west corridor, south, central, everywhere. They'll be able to come there. Instead of putting them in a van to take them to Aruka, we'll be putting them in a maxi to take them to Shagaramas Youth Center. Madam Speaker, and because we know that in East Trinidad there are many communities like Hoketa, Malabar, Maloney, Arima, we will as well construct a facility in Wallafield to train our young people. We don't want them in Aruka. We don't want them in Colony Orange as well. We want them in training facilities to develop themselves. We don't want to put them in an orange jumper. We want less of those trucks on the road with barbed wire behind it and the police moving and providing transport to take them to court. We don't want to provide that for young people. We do not want court places and prison places for young people. We want development and education and technical vocational learning to develop them all over Trinidad and Tobago, including in Barataria and Samoa, including in Couva South, including in Shoguanas East, and Naparima and Point-a-Pierre. All over Trinidad and Tobago, we are going to provide opportunities for young people. In Claxton Bay, in Naparima, we are going to provide for all the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker. That is how the PNM operates. We're not here for old talk and where the minister, what the minister look like, if the minister short, if the minister tall. That is not going to solve crime. When they were in government, Madam Speaker, they battled with this problem to the extent that they had 5 members of their side. 6 national security ministers. 6 national security ministers, and yet they left office and left us in a hot mess that the PNM has to fix today. And then they come to talk about crime. But you know why they're speaking about crime? We understand why they're speaking about crime. It's because elections coming, and that is all they have to campaign about. And we understand now why their members are leaving in droves from the Rising Sun to the Balizé. Madam Speaker, you know, as we do the business of the people observe what we are about, and they could recognize, well, I don't know, is foolishness a parliamentary term, Madam Speaker? They could recognize foolishness when they see it. And that motion that we are debating has a high percentage of foolishness in it, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we are moving swiftly ahead in a positive direction. Without distraction and without delay, we will not be distracted by motions like this. It is frivolous, it is vexatious, and it is a waste of parliamentary time, Madam Speaker. We are going to constitute our efforts in partnering with agencies such like the NESC, the MIC, and YTEP to partner with them and offer more opportunities. You saw we displayed before, and it's going to be available to everybody. Training programs in heavy equipment operation. I am sure the member for Barataria Sawa could tell some of his constituents, get on board with what the government is doing and learn how to operate a truck, a backhoe, an excavator, a skid steer. That is what the young people want, not old talk. Not old talk about crime. What they want to know is, what can you do to improve my circumstances? And that is what this government, under the leadership of Keith Christopher Rowley, is doing, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I will wait for the budget debate to inform the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago of the hundreds of programs that we have available. But I've made the point that we are proactive about what we are doing. We are focusing on reducing the number of our young citizens available to the criminal elements in this country. We are repurposing where we can, and we are making sure that we find opportunities, training opportunities available all across the country for our young people. We are not interested in turning our young people into career criminals, but rather into business people and career professionals. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, I want to say to my colleague that we on this side are convinced that if we bend the tree while it is young, that it is in so doing that we reduce the situation where young persons, who many of them are full of potential, many of them are bright, energetic, and willing to contribute to this country. If we bend the tree while it is young, it is very likely that we will work together to have a better society for all of our citizens. But if you find frustration in being able to execute any good idea that you might have, and sometimes a member for Vancouver South does have an idea or two, not many. If you find that you're unable to execute those ideas, then you can talk to any member on this side. We are about positive development for all the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
Member for Vancouver South.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, as I join this debate. And I want to immediately tell the member for La Hakata Talparo, I will not fall victim to his mama guy, but he knows fully well that I am indeed a competent member of parliament, and that is why he was able to make that comment about getting good ideas from a member of parliament on the opposition bench. And I want to take the opportunity to respond to some of the false narrative, the propaganda that has been put on the record this afternoon by the Minister of National Youth Development and National Service. Because you see, in his final commentary, or before he came to an end, he indicated that the opposition should not talk about ministers of national security and so on, because we had a number of ministers. But they too have had ministers of national security, and probably someone on their side must get up and, during the course of this debate, and indicate where is the former member for point 14 and why was he relieved of his portfolio and responsibility as the Minister of National Security. And in fact, if you want to know about the whereabouts of that former minister, you may have to ask one Mr. Piper from point 14, and he probably will assist you. And Madam Speaker, the government also had the member who sits opposite me, the member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, as a Minister of National Security. And the state of affairs did not improve in Trinidad and Tobago. And the current Minister of National Security, really, if you do a poll from 1956 to 2023, he will emerge to be the worst Minister of National Security in Trinidad and Tobago. That is the reality, Madam Speaker. And that is why the argument that was put forward by the member for Lahoketa Talparo in terms of attempting to discredit the performance of the government between 2010 to 2015 about ministers of national security holds no water. It is propaganda, Madam Speaker. And again, you see sometimes I think that it is matchstick that has broken in the ears of some of the members on the government side. So it is important from our point of view to correct the records, because they do not listen and they attempt to create this false narrative, hoping that they can get the population to be on their side from the point of view of whether they are winning the war on crime. And again, the member indicated that the UNC is well known for crime politics. The UNC is focusing on crime because we want to utilize crime and criminality, hoping that it will be the pathway or the road towards the government of Trinidad and Tobago. I want to tell the member for Lahoketa Talparo that the population will indeed send a message to you on the 14th of August as it relates to your performance on crime. But more importantly, Madam Speaker, the member indicated, and this has been their constant narrative, that the opposition, they have no support for the opposition when bills are brought to the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. And virtually in every debate, we have to stand and correct the records. And I will not allow it. I will not allow that this afternoon to be put on the record without a rebuttal from the opposition, Madam Speaker, because this is the last time. Correct. This is the last time any member of the government should attempt to project this false narrative to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, because they are desperate. They are desperate, and that is why they continue to repeat this propaganda and this false narrative, Madam Speaker. Because you see, it is important, as I said, to remind, and the member holds a very important portfolio in the context of the government and their political party. He's the general secretary of the party.
Ex-leader.
He is someone, the member has a responsibility to speak to the young people of this country, the future of this country. And it is important that when the minister speaks, whether it is on the parliament, in the parliament, or outside of the parliament, that he puts forward the reality and not attempt to skew the reality, Madam Speaker. And that is why I will tell him that from the point of view of crime-fighting bills, the opposition gave support to the bill, Access to Bill Amendment Bill 2017, and made extensive amendments, Madam Speaker. The miscellaneous provision, mutual assistance in criminal matters, proceeds of crime, financial intelligence unit of Trinidad and Tobago, Customs and Exchange Control Bill 2017, the miscellaneous provisions, Supreme Court of Judicature and Children Bill 2018, the payments into court bill 2018, the administration of justice indictable proceedings amendment number 2 bill 2019, the firearms bill 2019. The opposition supported, still supported it, although the opposition support was not needed when the legislation was piloted. And I see the member for La Hawketa Talparo smiling broadly because he has to accept the facts that is being put here. And the Civil Asset Recovery and Management and Unexplained Well Bill 2019. And I am coming to the special majority bills because this should be the last time. You must not have that sense of hypocrisy. Of hypocrisy to stand in this parliament and attempt to mislead the young people of Trinidad and Tobago. Because if indeed you are going down the road of misleading the young people of Trinidad and Tobago, we well know of the direction the People's National Movement is taking down the country. And the member for La Hawketa Talparo, go back and read the Hansard, and you will see the following special majority bills were passed with opposition support. 1, the Tax Information Exchange Agreements, United States of Act 2016, the FATCA bill. The Anti-Gang 2018 bill. The Insurance Act 2016, member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West. Your attempts to engage in crosstalk will not drown out the facts that we are putting on the record. Because at the end of the day, Madam Speaker, this is the reality, and the most important, the bill amendment bill 2019, Madam Speaker, and the anti-terrorism amendment bill 2018. And I want to remind the member, because the PNM is a very hypocritical party. They like to create that they have no support. They get no support from anybody. Everybody is against them. Trinidad and Tobago is against them in terms of government. Right? Even the Privy Council, they will tell you, is against them. But you know, between 2010, September, May of 2010 to September of 2015, where was your patriotism? Where was your commitment to Trinidad and Tobago as it relates to crime fighting? Why did the PNM vote against the Constitution Amendment Capital Offences Bill 2011? The Administration of Justice Electronic Monitoring Bill 2011. The Bill Amendment Bill 2013. The Miscellaneous Provisions, Defense and Police Complaints Bill 2013. The Miscellaneous Provisions, Administration of Justice Bill 2014. Where was your commitment? Where was your sense of patriotism in fighting crime? And where was the need to embrace and work from a whole of government approach? And embrace the opposition and be bipartisan in the approach to crime fighting. That is the hypocrisy of the People's National Movement, Madam Speaker. And we will have none. We will have none of it. We will have none of their propaganda. And that is why the opposition will be consistent in its position. You cannot trust any one of them in terms of what they spew and what they espouse to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And, Madam Speaker, the contribution of the member for La Joqueta Talparo really reminds me of what we would call full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Madam Speaker. And, Madam Speaker, I thought that the member in his presentation would have come or used the opportunity to tell us what is really being done on behalf of the law-abiding citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Because it is clear that the population, the law-abiding citizens of the country, they are indeed on the run. There's a sense of hopelessness. There's a sense of mortal fear in relation to whether an individual is at the supermarket, whether they are at a gas station, whether they are at the banks, when they come out from the banks and so on. And in fact, the goodly member for La Joqueta Talparo said he was driving recently in McBean. And he's very familiar with the roads of McBean and environs. I wonder, Madam Speaker, if the member drove past the gas station at St. Mary's Junction in Karapichaima last night and was advised that the gas station was robbed by 4 gun-toting and gun-wielding bandits. And in addition to that, Madam Speaker, that yesterday I'm reading or I'm recollecting a Newsday online article where 2 persons were robbed in the parking lot of the Trincity Mall on Wednesday afternoon, where a 56-year-old man and a 75-year-old woman was standing in the car park of True Value supermarket around 2:45 p.m. when they were confronted by a bandit with a gun. The bandit hit the man several times on his head before snatching his bag, and also snatched the woman's bag, which contained $600, Madam Speaker. Because, Madam Speaker, according to the data from the Police Services Crime and Problem Analysis Unit, robberies and burglaries at residences, they are saying, have not seen an overall increase. This was the statistics or the data that was presented by the Minister of National Security, Fitzgerald Hines, in the Senate on the 12th of June in a response to a question on the apparent increase in crime of that nature. And there was a conclusion that there were increases in areas such as Cunupia and Barataria and so on, and in the constituency, because I stand as the member for Couva South. And I'm sure that if you do a poll in all of the constituencies under the control of the government, in every constituency, the constituents will challenge the statistics because of the proliferation of home invasions and robberies in Trinidad and Tobago. But, Madam Speaker, the minister, during his response in the other place, told the country that to this end, he assured, firstly, that the police service is taking all measures to tackle home invasion, with several crime suppression strategies being deployed. To this end, a specialized team of intelligence officers, CID personnel, and analysts have been designated to respond to home invasions across the country. And this team will receive enhanced training, equipment, and other necessary resources. Madam Speaker, I liaise with officers of the Central Division from time to time. I liaise with the Freeport Police Station. I liaise with the Couva Police Station. And I'm sure, because I see all my colleagues are nodding their heads in a very approving manner, they liaise with officers of the police service, and there are no specialized units appointed by the Minister of National Security to deal with home invasion in Trinidad and Tobago. That is mere propaganda again. And the team will receive enhanced training and equipment and other necessary resources. Madam Speaker, recently there was a home invasion, or what I would call a brutal robbery that occurred within at a mini-mart in Calcutta. And when they finished, robbed the mini-mart in a very brazen act, the mini-mart was firebombed in Calcutta. It is on the public record, it is in the public domain, it is on all the newspapers, it was on all the newspapers. And Madam Speaker, I continue to liaise with the police, and you know what they told me? They have 2 used vehicles at the Freeport Police Station. Their manpower on every shift, they should have at least between 8 to 12 officers. They have less than 50% of that strength on every shift. And a senior officer told me that when 2 officers or 1 officer is absent on a shift, the whole issue of policing within the community collapses because they cannot function effectively. And they did not need a crime symposium from a regional perspective to tell you how to fill the vacancies as it relates to the manpower needs of the police service of Trinidad and Tobago. The Minister of National Security is very aware. We have been told time and time again that there is a vacant number of 1,400 police officers that are needed. And they will attempt to tell you that they have no control over the police service of Trinidad and Tobago, the Police Service Commission. But I think that if they are responsible and they have a sense of leadership, the Minister of National Security will tell the Prime Minister, who is the head of the National Security Council, whenever you meet the head of state of the country, press upon the head of state to ensure that the Police Service Commission fills the vacancies within the police service of Trinidad and Tobago. That is the leadership that is needed in terms of the fight against crime. Not rhetoric and old talk. Not rhetoric and old talk. And every minute across the floor, who will get locked up and who on bail and all that rhetoric. We need leadership. We need action. And the government, based on successive ministers of national security, have failed the people in Trinidad and Tobago over the last 8 years. And Madam Speaker, I say so that there's a sense of hopelessness. There's a sense of hopelessness because the statistics continue to be, the data continues to show that law-abiding citizens in this country are under attack because of the inaction and the incompetence and the lack of leadership and the lack of vision from the Minister of National Security. 700 motor vehicles have been stolen in the first 5 months of 2023, Madam Speaker. And you know what really caused me to be alarmed? And I know that we are at an end, an all-time low under this government, Madam Speaker. I want to refer you to an article that was written by one Sasha Wilson, the 21st of June, 2023. And the headline was, Cop to traumatize home invasion victims, protect yourselves and properties as you see fit. That was the headline. And in the wake of a series of home invasions in the Barrackpore district, a senior police has advised residents to deal with criminals as they see fit to defend themselves. Imagine this. The police service, based on the leadership, based from the point of view, because if you have a national security minister instilling confidence, instilling a sense of purpose and focus to tackle crime fighting, a senior police would not be throwing up his hands in the air. And the senior police advised residents to deal with the criminals as they see fit to defend themselves, because addressing a police town meeting at Vickers Country Club in Barrackpore, a senior superintendent said, your home is your castle, and you are entitled to protect yourself against any external person who comes to make trouble for you. You have to protect yourself and your family. I will not go on to say how. Use your imagination. Imagine that is what we come to. Imagine that is where to use your imagination. If the police had the resources, they had the motor vehicles, they had the, for example, the support of joint police-army patrols, body cams, CCTV in the Barrackpore district and so on, You think that they would have been telling the law-abiding citizens, you have to protect yourself and your family. I would not go on to say how. Use your imagination and deal with it accordingly because they are in your place. Madam Speaker, and in addition to that, a businessman Mr. Laltu Sipasad, was moved to tears after he spoke about his ordeal. He told reporters afterwards that the incident occurred a couple of years ago, but he is still traumatized. And addressing officers at the meeting, he said, right now, I don't know what to do if they come again, how to protect myself and family. I need some help from you all. All I could do is use a machete or some piece of iron or something. I am really scared. That is the reality. That is after 8 years in government. That is after the member for Lavantil West has been the Minister of National Security, Madam Speaker. And the time for the old talk, the time for the rhetoric, the time for the propaganda has come to an end, Madam Speaker. And you know what is more important, Madam Speaker? That if we take an approach to the Prime Minister, you would believe that there is no crisis as it relates to.
Honourable Member, you have 2 more minutes of ordinary time available to you. You're entitled to 15 more minutes extended time to wind up your contribution if you so wish.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll certainly take advantage of that additional 15 minutes. I have much more to say. Yes. And if you listen to the Prime Minister, who is the head of the National Security Council, and you read in the newspaper, the Newsday newspaper of Thursday, the 25th of May, PM no crisis, and another headline on page 10, PM defends approach to crime. And he indicated that when a government is elected to govern the affairs of the country, it is the responsibility of the government to ensure that, well, I am saying, Madam Speaker, he said that there is no crisis. But I'm saying that when a government is elected to deal with the national security responsibility of its citizens, it must fulfill that mandate. And from where I sit, Madam Speaker, we have failed miserably. During the course of this debate, my colleagues on this side, they have been able to establish and they have provided the supporting data and material to further strengthen our position, to strengthen the case that was put forward by the member for Sawa Barataria when he piloted this particular debate, this motion. And it is not passing strange that Trinidad and Tobago ranks 6 on the list of the world's most criminal countries. And I take no joy in saying this because this is the reality, Madam Speaker, and crime continues to impact upon the persons who reside in the constituency of Couva South. Persons have started to migrate because they are living in mortal fear. The minister is yet to show his face in Couva South to address any meeting or to provide any leadership to the police in Freeport and in Couva to visit, to find out, to see the conditions that exist in the Couva and Freeport police stations, Madam Speaker. And as I said, home invasions, robberies of vehicles and so on continue to be the order of the day. And Madam Speaker, it is crisis after crisis, whether it is in the police service and whether it is in the fire service, whether it is in the immigration division, whether it is in the prisons, whether it is in the defense force. Only recently a Galil disappeared. I am not blaming the Minister of National Security to say that it is his personal responsibility. But the crises that continue to prop up from time to time definitely lends credibility to something is amiss in terms of the leadership. And Madam Speaker, fire stations fall under the jurisdiction and the responsibility of the member for Laventille West. And the member for La Haroqueta Talparo seem not to be concerned about the people of Couva. Probably is concerned about the land assets in Couva. But he is not concerned about the people in Couva, because if indeed he was concerned about the people in Couva, he would have told the Minister of National Security that in Couva there is the National Aquatic Center, the Cycling Velodrome, the National Cricket Center, the Couva Hospital, the multi-training facility which they renamed, the Point Lisas Industrial Estate, the Port of Point Lisas, the Phoenix Park Industrial Estate, and recently they went to launch a solar park in Phoenix Park. And to tell you how they are not accustomed with the geography of Trinidad and Tobago, they launched a solar park in Phoenix Park, but telling you they launched it in Brecken Castle. That is how they know the geography of the country. But more importantly, look at the assets, look at the number of employees in addition to the communities of Dow Village and Esperanza and California and Couva and Windsor Park and Phoenix Park, and yet you do not have a functioning hazmat tender at the Savonetta Fire Station, Madam Speaker. It is sad. And also, Madam Speaker, the Couva Fire Station also, that is in a state of chaos. And I am sure that if the member was very concerned about his responsibilities, because his responsibilities take into consideration from the point of view of public order, safety, and law enforcement. It takes into consideration the police service, the fire service, the prison service, the lifeguard services of Trinidad and Tobago. And the assets that I just referred to in terms of what is owned by the people of Trinidad and Tobago really should get priority attention from the Minister of National Security. And then, Madam Speaker, it is important to look at not only the state of fire stations in Couva, but it is a responsibility across the board in the context of Trinidad and Tobago. Because, Madam Speaker, it is not politics, it is the reality. And certainly we do not want, and I'm sure that I speak for all the 41 members in this House, that we do not want a repetition of the incident which occurred in Siparia at the beginning of April 2023, when Mother Kemba Morris and her daughter perished in that unfortunate situation, that fire at their home, Madam Speaker, it is not a matter of politicizing. It is a matter of meeting and treating with the issues as it relates to the real or the reality confronting the people of this country. And we are saying to the Minister of National Security, we are saying to the Prime Minister and his entire cabinet, allocate resources to fire stations throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago so that we will not have a repetition of what transpired in Superior, Madam Speaker. Because at the end of the day, not only that situation, but following the Kemba Morris situation, one transpired also in Rochard Road in Pinal, where the family of a businessman by the name of Anil Sundar, he had to wait for, firstly, the fire tender in less than 10 minutes that responded to the fire at his home ran out of water. And I hope the Minister of Public Utilities listening to, because they always, the whole of government approach. The whole of government approach. We have it under control. We liaising and we talking with each other. But everything falling down from a whole of government approach because of the incompetence of all of them, the whole lot of them. And if they had any decency, Madam Speaker, they will do a sense of reflection. Indeed, they are the most disconnected government from the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And Madam Speaker, the issue continues as it relates to the organs or what is under the responsibility of the Minister of National Security. We, on this side, we are concerned also about the state of affairs at the prison services of Trinidad and Tobago. We are concerned that there is the need to focus also on the provision of adequate lifeguard services in this country, because we all are duty-bound in our responsibility to look after the well-being of the people of this country when they go to the nation's beaches. And I am saying to the Minister of National Security that you have that responsibility, not only from the point of view of the lifeguard stations, but you must ensure, member for Laventille West, that these lifeguard stations, whether they are Maracas or Lucero or Mayaro, or, well, the ones in Tobago, they fall under the THA and so on, they have the necessary apparatus. The necessary apparatus, whether it is jet skis, it is dinghies, it is ambulances and so on, Madam Speaker, because again, these are the things that are near and dear to the ordinary people when they go or they traverse the length and breadth of this country. Any mother or father, when they take out their children on excursions to the beaches and so on, they want to know that there is a government and a Minister of National Security who is putting a sense of focus as it relates to the provision of facilities and equipment in relation to a better lifeguard service. And from where we sit, we are of the strong opinion, Madam Speaker, that the minister has failed also in dealing with a lifeguard service that is competent and where the ordinary people of this country has confidence. And they have confidence in the lifeguards, but they do not have confidence in a Minister of National Security. Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I will now attempt to bring my contribution or ensure that we put on the record before I end where we are, because the member for La Hoqueta Talparo again attempted to create a narrative that the opposition has no solutions. We just get up and talk and so on. But at the end of the day, we have advocated, and the opposition led by the member for Siparia have said that we will institute some solutions at the community level to dispel the fears of the ordinary citizens as it relates to crime. And the UNC is about securing communities and ensuring that there's a restart to community comfort patrols in communities. We are about securing families, and in that regard, we would support and we would want everyone to support our proposal to increase legal gun ownership for you, the law-abiding citizens. When we were in government, we dealt with a public lighting program throughout the length and breadth of this country that made citizens feel safe. And we will restore a nationwide plan to improve your street lighting in your respective communities, to take back control of your streets. And we will also use the municipal police in the local government corporations to secure our children at the primary and secondary school, Madam Speaker, because they promise in successive budgets to hire 100 municipal police officers in the 14 regional corporations. And in 8 years, if you ask them how much they have hired less than 20%. And that is why we are saying, overall, the Minister of National Security has to go. If he has any decency, he will listen to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Prime Minister will ensure that he no longer occupies the position of Minister of National Security. I do not know who he can put, because if there is a rotation or a shuffling of the cards, there will be a similar result, and the law-abiding citizens will have no hope in the People's National Movement, the only hope to restore Trinidad and Tobago from the point of view of the national security point of view, and where the citizens of this country can have a sense of security and a sense of hope, is the member for Siparia and the United National Congress.
Member for St. Anne's East.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. It is a pleasure to rise and to contribute to this debate today. You know, Madam Speaker, though we are on different sides of the floor, we are human first. And as I listened to my colleague from Couva South contributing, I saw the member for Princestown yawning widely, Madam Speaker, and I understand why. Because this is the fourth private members' day that we have been here discussing this issue, and it seems as though the members on the other side believe that by saying one thing over and over and over again, it is going to be accepted. But, Madam Speaker, the member for Couva South said that he feels matchstick breaking our ears, but matchstick ain't breaking our ears. We heard you the first time. We heard you the second time. We heard you the third time, and we are hearing you now. And we are saying to you that despite whatever straw men you put up there, the People's National Movement and the people of this country will not be derailed. We will not be distracted. And we are going to continue doing the work that we are doing, pressing ahead. And I want to tell you, Madam Speaker, that all of the members on this side stand in full support and solidarity of our colleague, the Minister of National Security. An experienced politician, a citizen that has contributed for many years in this country, and someone that is well respected and holds that office, working hard to ensure the security and safety of all of us. I have confidence in this Minister of National Security. Madam Speaker, the UNC changed minister after minister after minister after minister. There's a standing, I don't want to call it a joke because it's sad, it's not even funny, that one day the Prime Minister at that time, who is the opposition leader now, called for the Minister of National Security and about 3 people jumped up. That's not even funny, it's sad. It is sad. Because here we are again, how many years later, and the same thing is being proposed to the country by the United National Congress. Change the minister, change the minister, change the minister. It didn't work for you and it's not going to work for us. Why do I have confidence in this Minister of National Security? Madam Speaker, we went through a very trying time in this country, in the world, during the time of COVID-19. I remember the day the Prime Minister stood up and said we have to close our schools. I am a parent, and I considered the effect of that, and we all thought it would be a short measure. That stretched to 2 years for some children. And I, at that time, was in a different capacity within the cabinet. Now I am Minister of Education. And I know too well the trials our children went through, and when they came back out of school in April of 2022, we all saw the effect of that on our children. Imagine 2 years away from socialization, 2 years away from dealing with your peers, 2 years away from developing the tolerance that it takes to sit in a classroom and have the kind of discipline required. And our children came out, and many of them were behaving in ways that we could not understand, appreciate, and it was causing national concern. And I reached out to that Minister of National Security. I reached out because we could not handle it alone. The Ministry of Education could not go it alone. And I can tell you the immediate response of the minister assured me that this is a man that cares about this country, our children, and our society. Immediately I asked, I need to meet with your officials. We need to discuss how we deal with this. And into our conversations came the TTPS at the highest level, ensured by our Minister of National Security, because he understands that the underpinning of crime is not on the street when they are old. It is in our schools when they are misbehaving and they need the support and they can't get it there. And so into our discussions came the TTPS. And we went on for days in order to come up with something that would help us. And into our schools immediately, 17 of our secondary schools where we had the most problems, went the community police. So I'm listening to the member for Couva South, and you're talking about bringing community police into our schools. We are doing that already. So thank you. Thank you for your endorsement of what we are doing under this Minister of National Security, because we understand the PNM understands what is required, and we have put a man there to do the work, and he is doing the work that we have to do. So we have our community police in our schools helping us, and I want the country to remember back in May 2022, the average was maybe 3 times a week. All of these fights going viral on social media. Consider it to today, May 2023, where our average is down to maybe less than 1 a week with those kinds of fights. It's a lot more sporadic. It's difficult to eradicate. But the fact is that those community police, and I want to give kudos to those officers in the schools. I want to give kudos to the officers sent there through the intervention of the Minister of National Security to help support our children. And the community police are the ones that run the police youth clubs. Let's give them kudos again for that. Because the children they are helping and supporting, were they not doing that, these children would be without family, without support, guiding them in a positive direction. So the police are in the schools, encouraging the children to come into the community in the police youth clubs to ensure that continuity of support, providing mentorship, role models for our children. Under this Minister of National Security, that is what is currently going on. And that is so critical, Madam Speaker. If we do not catch them there in the schools, then we have a problem, because later on, those same children who could have been stopped and saved would be the ones that we'll be budgeting for under the budget of the Ministry of National Security. Madam Speaker, I have confidence in not just the talk, but the walk of the Minister of National Security. Madam Speaker, another area that is very important for us is mentorship of our children. Mentorship of our children, because we want to deal with the problem before it mushrooms and balloons into something that is more deleterious to our country. We have written to the Ministry of National Security, again under this Minister of National Security, speaking to them about children who are truant, children who are not appearing in our classrooms. And we know that there are children who fell out over the COVID. We know that there are children who need that level of support. And again, who is going into the highways, the byways, up the hills where our school social workers cannot go? Who is going to pull out those children, speak to those parents, encourage them? Who is doing that? The police, under the guidance and instruction of the Minister of National Security. Just yesterday, a constituent messaged me, and she said to me, my children's names are in the police station, and the police want to speak to us as parents. Why? Because her children had not been to school for a couple of days. And so the school made the report to the Student Support Services. They could not find them where they went. And so they made the report to the police. And it is the police now who are looking for them, doing that work, helping, partnering with the Ministry of Education to find those children, question the parents, what's happening? Not punitive intentions, but to bring them back. Because if we don't bring back our children, and if the police don't help us to do that under the guidance of the Minister of National Security, then we will lose them. And we will find them again in the prisons. We will find them again in our homes. We will find them in the home invasions. That's why it is so important what this Minister of National Security is doing. And I said to that parent, I said, go and speak to the police and explain your situation. The parent was ill. And they moved from the house in order to take care of her. I said, explain to the police your situation. They are not looking to lock you up. They want your children back in school because it's important to us and to them and to the country that our children are there. This is under the instruction of the Minister of National Security. So when you ask me if I have confidence, yes, I have confidence in him. Yes. I want to ask the UNC, what are you doing to help? I can tell you that I wrote to this Minister of National Security asking for police officers to be involved in our school mentorship program. Madam Speaker, we have children who are parenting themselves. We have children who don't know what it is to have a father figure speaking to them and telling them, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. We have children in our system who are coming to school, nobody to feed them, nobody to clothe them. Teachers are at their wits' end. And we have to provide role models for these children. I've written to the Minister of National Security asking for the police to be involved in our mentorship program. And I can tell you within short order, a response was given by the police. They will be involved in our school mentorship program. That is ongoing. Madam Speaker, we need them. We need them because our children require that support. They require looking up to someone who can tell them about their own experiences and who can guide them in the right way, in the realest way possible. That is the support being provided to our children in our schools from the Minister of National Security through the TTPS. That's why I have confidence in him. What are you doing to help? I want to say this, Madam Speaker. We have been approached by NGOs, community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, civil society organizations, all wanting to make an impact in the school system because they understand that crime and criminality begins right there. And I'm saying that among all the people who have approached us, I have had no approach coming from the United National Congress. None. Is coming here every private members day for the last 4 private members day speaking about no confidence in the Minister of National Security. Is that helping? Who is that helping? Who is that helping? And that is what I want to ask. What is your track record as the UNC on crime legislation? None. Did you support the bail bill? No. Did you support the child marriage bill? Oh. Did you support the anti-gang bill? No. Did you support the cybercrime bill? No. Did you support the whistleblower bill? No. Did you support FATCA? No. Did you support the interception of communication? Did you support the gambling, gaming, and betting bill? If you support 1 out of the million, then that's 1 in a million. I give you kudos for that. But we quick to come here to speak about hypocrisy. We come to speak about hypocrisy? No. No. The UNC is so petulant. The UNC is so petulant that not even a national event is attended by the UNC members. Tell me I'm wrong. What is the example? What is the example they're showing to the children who we want to supply role models for to make sure that they understand what is good patriotism and good citizenship? The UNC can do more to help. Yes. And coming here every day to speak about no confidence, that's not helping. Do more to help our young citizens. I want to talk a little bit more about the track record because we're speaking about no confidence in the Minister of National Security. That's right. Who destroyed the crime-fighting units that were formed to tackle crimes in the special anti-crime units? Who cancelled the OPV contracts and left our borders porous? Who destroyed the facial recognition software and equipment at airports? Who passed Section 34 to protect criminals in Trinidad and Tobago? Under which administration was the famous life sport burst in Trinidad and Tobago with all the effects that it had? And on top of that, to put salt in the wound, you bring back the vilest person in the other house to serve still. Which one of our government?
Amber, I just ask you to retract that and rephrase it. Okay, please.
Certainly, Madam Speaker.
I'm not in an inquiry here about... Okay? Please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. One of the contributors with the most unparliamentary behavior Madam Speaker, there was someone who served as a Minister of National Security under the UNC that is now wanted in the USA for international crimes. A former police commissioner accused a sitting opposition member of parliament in a JSC of leaking information to criminals. In 2021, there's a report of the opposition leader calling the police monsters. This is the track record of the persons that week after week after week after week are bringing us here and saying they have no confidence in the Minister of National Security. No. Come better than that. We have confidence, and we know why we have confidence, and we will continue to have confidence in the Minister of National Security. And we speak over and over about our whole of government approach, and we will continue to speak to it because that is what we are doing. You can't approach crime simply on the level of the Ministry of National Security. You have to attack the root. That is why the Ministry of Education is partnering with the TTPS. That's why the Ministry of Youth Development and National Service will open every single youth camp that the UNC closed down. We will do it because we have to do it. These are the people that we need to support. These are the children growing up in circumstances that some of us would not even imagine exist. And as a government, we have a responsibility. So when they see us speaking about whole of government, we mean whole of government. When they see the Ministry of Education partnering with the police, we have to partner with them under this Minister of National Security. When you see the Ministry of Youth Development doing what they have to do to ensure we have youth camps and access centers and we have programs for our young people, these are the things that we as a PNM government that cares about our people are doing to attack crime. So it's not about the Minister of National Security. It's not about him. It's about all of us working together as a cabinet with a plan and a purpose and clear understanding of why we were voted into government. And if all the UNC sees as a way to help the crime situation, if all you see is by regurgitating what the PNM is already doing, putting community police in schools, we're already doing that. You're speaking about street lighting. The Ministry of Public Utilities has installed over 3,000 new street lights just in this term here alone. Over 10,000 repaired. So don't come to us with the recycled work of the People's National Movement. Respect us for who we are and for what we are doing, and respect the position of the Minister of National Security, who is working hard with all of us to ensure that we secure our people in Trinidad and Tobago. So if all you can do is to stand and say, fire the minister, fire the minister, fire the minister ad nauseum, then that will ensure that the UNC remains in its rightful place on that side of the house, and we in the PNM will stay on this side of the house, and we will do the work that is required to secure this country. All of us pulling together, working hard, Ministry of National Security, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Youth Development and National Service, Ministry of Social Development and Family Services. We will do the work to ensure that we safeguard the citizens of this country from the smallest to the biggest. We will do that under the astute leadership and guidance of the Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley, who understands what is required to secure this country. So no confidence, we on this side declare our confidence in our Minister of National Security. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Member for Carinese.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me the opportunity to speak on this timely and necessary private member's motion brought by the talented and brilliant member for Barataria. Madam Speaker, I would like to thank all the speakers on this side of the House for their passionate and well-intentioned contributions. Madam Speaker, we face unprecedented times in this country. As we all know, Trinidad and Tobago is now a cruel and brutal place. Madam Speaker, as a nation, we must take stock of what has happened and endeavor that this level of brutality and insecurity must never be allowed to continue. Madam Speaker, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago will remember the unparalleled feeling of safety and prosperity that we all enjoyed under Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar. Madam Speaker, truth be told, the local government elections will be a referendum on Prime Minister Keith Rowley and his ministers. Every single ministry is failing. Earlier this week, we learned of another horrific death in the oil and gas industry. On behalf of the members on this side, we give our condolences to the family of that person. But as we see again, there is no accountability in any sphere of governance. When questions are asked, we are all told to look the other way. But the time has come for citizens of this country to stand their ground. And we in the United National Congress under Kamala Persad-Bissessar will stand by the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and we will stand our ground. Madam Speaker, the member for Tobago West, the Minister of Education, I listened to her contribution, but she seemed very out of touch and out of reality. She spoke of confidence in the Minister of National Security and the help that he gave during COVID-19 in our school system. But Madam Speaker, we must remember what happened on November the 4th of 2022, when there was gunfire outside the Rose Hill School. Madam Speaker, the Minister of National Security is on record of saying that the video was misleading. The children were under their desks, scampering for their lives. And he said that the video was misleading. The children had to duck and run for cover as criminals exchanged gunfire outside of the school. Madam Speaker, we then have the issue on the 2nd of May, 2023, in Chaguanas West, the Monroe Road Hindu School, where a person was murdered on the school compound, and all the children had to view that dead body. How traumatizing could that be? Madam Speaker, the minister also spoke about mentorship, and she spoke about the Minister of National Security being a mentor for these children. But how can he be a mentor for these children when he is not even accountable for what has happened? Madam Speaker, the member also went on to speak about various bills, and I'd like to have put on the record that the Miscellaneous Child's Marriage Bill of 2016, all members voted in support of that bill. Madam Speaker, all members voted in support of that bill, as well as bail bill of the 2014. Madam Speaker, the member for Lohokita Talparo spoke of a whole of government approach and the fact that there are training programs for young persons in this country. And he spoke of having safe spaces and youth development, as well as educational opportunities and job training. Madam Speaker, I will spend a significant amount of time today on a part of my constituency where we see none of that, and that is in Kelly Village, where crime has grown exponentially in the last few years, and more so during his tenure. Madam Speaker, Kelly Village was a peaceful community between 2010 and 2015. It is not so again. Madam Speaker, I'd like to commend the member for Chaguanas West, as well as the member for Couva South, on their presentations today. The member for Chaguanas West spoke about accountability. He also spoke about the evasiveness of the Minister of National Security and the fact that he cannot take responsibility for anything that is happening in our country right now. He spoke about changes in policing, as well as the criminal justice system. And you know, he just returned from the Privy Council in the United Kingdom, something that the Minister of National Security has never done. Madam Speaker, I'll also speak about 3 central divisional town hall meetings that we had in Carinese, as well as MP for Couva South spoke about the fact that crime is everywhere and home invasions. Madam Speaker, we have seen an increase in home invasions in Carinese, and I will delve into more detail on that a little later, as well as stations without officers, stations being undermanned. In Caroni East, we have 3 police stations, and we had a crime symposium, a regional crime symposium costing in excess of $4 million, but we do not have police officers in our stations. So it's an issue of leadership. It's an issue of the strategic direction that this country wants to take, and we will have a referendum on this government in the local government election, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I'd like to restate the motion for those who may not know. whereas the Minister of National Security is responsible for ensuring public safety by the maintenance of law and order and the effective oversight of the national security infrastructure. And whereas the Minister of National Security, through his vast and continued incompetence, has mismanaged the organs and departments of national security, and whereas the Minister of National Security has demonstrated his inability to competently execute his duties, be it resolved that this House expresses lack of confidence in the Minister of National Security. Madam Speaker, each tenant of that motion, Karenese fully agrees with, and I will delve into this a little more. Madam Speaker, beginning with the inability to execute his duties, the Minister of National Security took office in April of 2021, and he was not the first choice to be Minister of National Security. It happened under tragic circumstances, and he was thrust upon this role due to a reshuffle in the cabinet, Madam Speaker. And there is no indication that serious crime would abate under his tenure. And Madam Speaker, my intention is to primarily focus on Karenese during my contributions, but of course, I would expand into the national context. And one of the most glaring failures of this Minister of National Security was his inability to keep serious crime out of the public's view during Carnival 2023. You see, Madam Speaker, Carnival 2023 was our reopening to the world. It was our first full carnival after COVID-19, and we invited the world to visit our shores, and extensive funding was put aside for this. And this was despite the numerous international travel advisories against our country. Carnival 2023 was branded as the mother of all carnivals. But in fact, Madam Speaker, it turned out to be the mother of all embarrassments. When our nationals as well as visitors witnessed an early morning double murder along Arapita Avenue in Woodbrook, which left a British citizen nursing a gunshot wound on the 18th of February 2023. Madam Speaker, reports of persons that were there said that they thought it was a carnival skit that they were watching in amusement as two men approached two others and gunned them down in cold blood, Madam Speaker, right? Instead of laughs, they got screams of terror as these persons drew their last breath. And Madam Speaker, this is one of the busiest partying strips during Carnival, and it was on Carnival Friday, I think it was. Madam Speaker, the mother of all carnivals showed the murderous underbelly that lies here in Trinidad and Tobago. Hundreds of law enforcement officials were unable to stop a double assassination in front of hundreds of party revelers. It sent hundreds scampering, and the homeowners rushed to their homes to lock their doors. That is how scared that they were, Madam Speaker, with hundreds of police officers around. How low can we go? How can they defend the situation we are in here in Trinidad and Tobago? On behalf of the members on this side and the hundreds and thousands of right-thinking persons and God-fearing citizens in Trinidad and Tobago, we apologize for those who witnessed those murders. We apologize to the street vendors who witnessed the incident and said on record that they were too scared to continue operating that night. One vendor said, "Yeah, we're feeling unsafe, but what could we do?" My friend, you simply have to vote out the PNM. Don't vote. Madam Speaker, Minister Hines was unable to keep Carnival 2023 crime-free, and he has been unable to marshal the security forces of this nation to prevent crime as best as he could from occurring and from holding perpetrators to account. He could not do it then, and he cannot do it now. It would take a UNC government led by Kamla Prasad Bissessa to rescue this country once again. She did it once, Madam Speaker, and she will do it again. Madam Speaker, I'd like to move to the tenet of ensuring public safety. And I'd like to apply many of the tenets of this motion to what has happened in my constituency in Carinese over the last couple of years. And to be fair to the Minister of National Security, I will only refer to crimes that happened since he became the Minister of National Security, right? And I'll refer to some Hansard, as well as the 3 Central Division town meetings that we had in Caroni East during his tenure. And it is my intention to show that the promises that he made were not kept. We are more unsafe than ever. And that serious crime, murders, and victimization of citizens, law-abiding citizens, continues unabated, and in fact has increased and proliferated during his tenure. Madam Speaker, I will also speak about initiatives that the United National Congress will propose to do, such as community comfort patrols, legal gun ownership, street lighting, as well as municipal policing. Madam Speaker, on the 5th of May, 2021, question number 143 on notice, page 19 on the Hansard, the question was, could Minister Hines state what specific measures are being implemented to curb the current high incidence of violent crimes in communities in and around the Caroni East constituency? And the Minister of National Security at that time said, many strategies have been implemented to curb crime in Caroni East, including very proactive and scientific approaches, which include hosting weekly operation meetings with First Division officers, inspectors, and sergeants of the respective stations, and identifying the situation and analyzing strategic implementation of patrols, roadblocks, search exercises, and engaging on ongoing projects through the Central Division Intelligence Unit, where data is being collected, collated, converted into actionable intelligence. And this is in keeping with intelligence-led policing initiative geared towards the reduction of organized crime. And he went on to say there's a monthly average of 10 anti-crime exercises conducted in the 3 stations, that is Cunupia, Caroni, and Las Lomas, and several public awareness exercises. And in addition, there's help from the Emergency Response Patrol, the Interagency Task Force, and the Guard and Emergency Branch. And patrols have been ongoing. Madam Speaker, he said this on May 2021. And every year since my first year in Parliament, I have asked him basically the same question. And I will continue to ask him the same question every year that I am in Parliament. And Madam Speaker, the residents of Caroni has seen nothing remotely close to what this minister has promised on this particular answer of this Hansard question. Madam Speaker, on the 10th of June, just a couple months after this question, 2021, we had a home invasion in St. Helena in Mohipa Trace. $150,000 was stolen and the homeowner was shot, Madam Speaker. And, you know, just recently, Minister Hines spoke that right now in 2023, home invasions are on increase in Cunupia, right? There were 12 in 2023 compared to 5 in 2022. So whatever he says he's doing is not working, Madam Speaker, and that is our point. What is the point of keeping him if it's not working? Madam Speaker, on the 4th of September, 2021, 5 persons were murdered in Carinese in one day, Madam Speaker, in one single day. We had 3 persons gone down in Kelly Village, right? And I will spend a lot of time on Kelly Village, Madam Speaker. And we had 2 persons murdered in Enterprise, right? What about the proactive and scientific approaches, the weekly operations meetings with inspectors and sergeants, Madam Speaker? Madam Speaker, one of the main issues we have in Kelly Village, most persons would know Kelly Village. It's just south of the airport. And there's one main road, the Carney South Bank Road. And Madam Speaker, within one stretch of that main road, which is the Carney South Bank Road, over the last 2 years, we have had over 10 murders on that road, Madam Speaker. And when I say murders, I really want to say assassinations, right? Persons using high-powered machine guns and putting 30 bullets into somebody in broad daylight, at nighttime, at 7 p.m., and I will go through many of these crimes, right? And despite my pleas, nothing is being done. I spoke to the minister at a crime symposium earlier in UWI earlier this year. Nothing is still being done. Madam Speaker, on the 10th of September, a man was shot on the Carney South Bank Road at 7:45 a.m. Basically, when children are going to school, parents are commuting to work, the body was left right there on the pavement on the Carney South Bank Road, right? He died in full view of everyone, right? And that is what we are calling for, CCTV cameras, Madam Speaker. This is a short stretch of road. If you put one camera at one end of the road and another camera at the other end, you would have an idea of all vehicles that are coming in and going out. At least you could start your investigations. Persons are not allowed to die, and well, they die. That's it, full stop. You could go and look for the perpetrators. Madam Speaker, all these crimes that I'm calling out, it's not different persons that are doing the killing. It is probably just a few, but we cannot catch those few that are continuing to kill, Madam Speaker. So we speak about the need for CCTV cameras. And this is a hotspot area, right? How difficult is it to put a couple CCTV cameras along the Carney South Bank Road, right? We have international visitors coming from the airport. They may pass through there, right? You want them to see, be in the middle of a gun battle or something? I mean, why isn't anything being done about this? Madam Speaker, on the 17th of September 2021, a man was on the phone with his wife, and he was killed on Chin Chin Road. And he was coming from his workplace, from Kiss Bakery. This was a law-abiding citizen. This was not no gang member. And he was shot dead right after he spoke to his wife. And that is why my leader is calling for legal FULs, Madam Speaker. Persons have to defend themselves from these criminals with their illegal guns. Madam Speaker, on the 22nd of October 2021, a man was killed after getting his hair cut while he was walking along a dark road in Carneys. And this is what we are speaking about. The need for street lighting. It makes for safer communities. Persons could see who are ahead of them if they have to turn around and run. Madam Speaker, that is the state where we have reached now in Trinidad and Tobago. The proliferation of illegal firearms makes walking the streets after dark a very dangerous endeavor, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on the 3rd of January, Carneys recorded 2 homicides, and this was the first double homicide for the year. And we don't really like to make records like this, but this is what we are being highlighted for. Nothing is being done about the crime in Carney East. And one of these persons got 60 bullets, Madam Speaker. The police collected 60 shells. How can you dodge that? And during the crime symposium, with regards to treating violence as a public health emergency, they spoke about banning high-powered rifles. But Madam Speaker, these high-powered rifles are illegal guns that are coming into the country. Whether you ban a legal FUL user from having a high-powered rifle or not does not affect the situation. These criminals do not have FULs. These are illegal guns. Madam Speaker, we saw just a couple of weeks ago at a roadblock in Marabella, the police service seized a number of high-powered rifles from a Venezuelan national. And I will speak to that as well a little later on. The fact that there's a proliferation of illegal guns right now in this country. And despite all my pleas to this Minister of National Security to have a gun amnesty, to at least do something to get these guns off the road, there's a high level of illegal guns in Trinidad and Tobago. These persons from Venezuela are not coming with a boatload of money to pay their first month rent here in Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker, and that is the reality of it. That is the reality of it. And while I empathize with many of our Venezuelan migrants, there are a few that are coming here for nefarious activities. And there is a connection between Venezuelan pushers of guns, illegal guns, and our black market here in Trinidad and Tobago. And that is a reality, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on the 16th of March, we had a drive-by shooting in same Kelly Village where one man was killed and another woman was injured. And this was a teenage woman. The member for Chaguanas West spoke about violence against women. And Madam Speaker, despite our pleas for the minister to have an increased police presence in especially Kelly Village, nothing is being done. No one is being brought to justice. And these guns and murderers are still on the street today. And there's no justice for any of these families, as well as any of these residents that live in Kelly Village. They live in absolute fear, daily and nightly fear, Madam Speaker. And I have no control, Madam Speaker, over any law enforcement official. All I can do, I write my letters, I attend my public meetings with the TTPS, and I am grateful for the meetings that they have with us. But all we can do is ask, all we can do is request, and nothing is being done by this Minister of National Security. And Madam Speaker, I'll now speak to a question that I asked the Minister of National Security on the 23rd of May 2022, and this is question number 179, page 8 of the Hansard. I asked, this is 2022, will the minister state what is being done by the TTPS to stem the increase in gun violence and gang activity in Kelly Village and environs? And the minister went on to say that the Scarney South Bank Road has been identified by police as a hotspot zone. In this regard, the Central Division Task Force and the Emergency Response Patrol Unit have been given extra responsibilities in this area. Intelligence officers on special patrols have been assigned, and also that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Services Air Support Wing will provide coverage as well in this area. My supplemental question to the minister was, has the TTPS considered a mobile police post for Kelly Village, to give additional support to the residents under siege? Madam Speaker, the minister went on to say that the TTPS is a very experienced outfit, and I am satisfied that it applies its best thoughts to this matter, but I cannot say in particular whether it has considered a police post in these circumstances. I then asked the minister what proactive measures are being taken in Kelly Village. He said, and his response was that Kelly Village has been identified as a hotspot zone and severe criminality is taking place. This includes, of course, drug dealing, arms trafficking, and other serious crimes. And I asked, my supplemental after this was, Minister, is a gun amnesty being considered for the central region or perhaps even the nation at this time? And the Minister of National Security went on to say, like Jamaica and countries around the world, the TTPS has implemented a very active, ongoing illegal firearms retrieval program based on intelligence findings of illegal firearms and bringing them into the hands of law enforcement. And that program continues. And I went on to ask Minister Hines, when can residents of this area expect to see a serious or significant reduction in crime? And the minister replied, I don't have a magic wand, but I can tell you I am satisfied as the Minister of National Security based on information I have received from the police organization led by Mr. McDonald Jacob on the basis of this answer. So, Madam Speaker, this was in May 2022. And the minister spoke about Kelly Village now being officially designated as a hotspot by the TTPS, and the fact that the air wing will be used to monitor Kelly Village. We still had no definitive answer on a police post, despite people being gunned down on the main road in Kelly Village basically on a monthly basis. And that's how there's a rapid deployment of personnel into Kelly Village. Madam Speaker, residents in Kelly Village complain of nightly occurrences of rapid gunfire, Madam Speaker. Every single night, persons fire guns in Kelly Village just to scare each other, I guess. and nothing is being done to stop this, Madam Speaker. How difficult is it for a police officer to just be placed somewhere there just to figure out from which house or which street these guns are being fired? How difficult is that? Or they just prefer to hear the rapid gunfire every night? These are the same guns that are being used to kill their fellow gang members from opposing sides. And one day, Madam Speaker, these bullets will kill a young child. It will kill a young mother. It will kill somebody, an innocent person, Madam Speaker. And they are waiting. The Minister of National Security is waiting for that. He's waiting for that to happen. Madam Speaker, it is so bad.
48.6. The minister is not waiting for that.
Okay, all right. So, member, I think you could withdraw that, and I think you could find another way to say it. I uphold the objection.
I understand. The minister is not doing anything about that situation. And I withdraw that comment, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, just right after I asked the Minister of National Security, about these questions in this parliament, Madam Speaker, on the 9th of May, 2 police officers were gunned down in Caronese on the 9th of May of 2022. And as well as their 2 female companions were also shot at that bar. Madam Speaker, even police officers are being targeted. And then we have a very serious one on the 22nd of August of 2022. A young business owner was lying at Kamachi's bar. Some of us on this side and that side might know it. And around midnight, he was asked to move his vehicle from the car park because it was blocking someone. And this young man, Madam Speaker, when he came out to move his car, was met by over 30 bullets, Madam Speaker. He was gunned down right there in the busy car park in front of, I would say, dozens of persons at that bar. And the persons just drove off. They just drove off like if nothing happened, right? No CCTV camera. From the year before, I'm asking the Minister of National Security to at least place a CCTV camera. So when these persons just drive off, there's no accountability. They are left to do another crime, Madam Speaker, and the weapons are still in the hands of the criminal. Madam Speaker, on the 12th of September 2022, right next to St. David RC Primary School, a shop owner at 7 p.m. was plying his trade when a vehicle pulled up to him and shot him. The police retrieved over 40 rounds, spent rounds of 9mm casings from the crime scene. And that person was left there on the ground until police came. In front, this was basically the middle of the night, and it was very, very busy, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, after this person in this car shot this man, he then pointed the weapon at the oncoming traffic for the person to stop while he made a 3-point turn.
Okay, so, Honourable Member, you have a few, maybe about 15 more seconds of ordinary time remaining. You are entitled to 15 more minutes. Might I ask how much longer you intend to be?
I will be at least 15 minutes, Madam Speaker.
Okay, so I haven't interrupted you. I'd ask if now is a convenient time for us to take the suspension, so that when we return, you'll have your full 15 minutes. So, this sitting is now suspended. We'll be returning here at 4:59. Okay? So is now suspended. Sure, that's what Hans said.